morning everyone. My name is Muhammad Eman and today I'm gonna talk about a country which is #1 superpower. First of all, let's discuss about the basis of the country for becoming a superpower. Which country is the most powerful in the world, or which country is the biggest superpower? If you can't answer this question so easily, then think. Which country's economy is the largest in the world? Or which country's GDP is greater than 20 trillion? Or which country's companies are the most famous in the world? Or which country's military, which country has the strongest military in the world? Or which country has won the most Nobel Prizes in the world? Or which country's movies have affected the world most? The answer to all these questions is America, America, and America. But the main question is how? How did America become so powerful? What did they do to become a superpower? Friend, this chart shows the history of the last 2000 years, the contribution of each country to the global GDP. As you see, before 1800s, India and China were the two major superpowers. Most of the economic and trade activities revolved around India and China. But after the 1900s, in just 100 years, America started gaining dominance and established such a larger share in the global GDP. But how? How did it become possible? For that, we need to delve into history to understand it. In 1942, an Italian explorer, Christopher Columbus, discovered some Caribbean islands near North America. And after this, Europeans got to know of America, and colonization of America started by the Europeans. During this time, Red Indians lived there, and they are known as the Native Americans. And there were numerous different tribes were living there at that time. But South America was mostly colonized by the Spain, and this is the reason why in most of the South American countries, Spanish is spoken. Britain established its first colony in America around the 1600s. And France started colonizing too in America. And at this time, these were the three superpowers: France, Britain, and Spain. In the years that followed, the population of the Native Americans was reduced by 80 to 90%. And there are several reasons behind it. But the main reason was the diseases. The diseases that European colonizers brought with them. Diseases like smallpox, measles, and influenza, and Native Americans had not developed any immunity against these. Several decades later, on 4th July 1776, American revolutionaries got independence from the Britishers, and America became a new country. And America became a new country. Here the America was born. 1850 was the era when British, French, and Spanish colonizers had occupied most territories in the world. But in this circumstance, America, the country of the USA, had already become a democratic country. So if any new country would have thought about to join the new country, they would have joined to USA, because the USA had already become a democratic country at that time, and they would get the same freedom and democracy which most of the states of America were starting to get. And that's the reason why Florida, Ohio, and Illinois preferred to join with the America instead of just remaining a part of British or French government. In 1836, Texas was the state which got freedom from Mexico, but Mexico was still tormenting them. But Mexico was still tormenting them so much that Texas decided to join. Texas decided to join with the USA. And similarly, the states one after another kept on joining with the USA, and the USA kept on growing. Every country or every state had a reason to join with the USA, but don't mistake America to have completely harmless, because the USA's intention was to expand its territory as much as possible, and that's the reason. And that's the reason why in 1867 America bought Alaskan from the Russia at a price of $7.2 million. There is a state Hawaii, which is in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Today, you would think about it. You would think that the state which is very far away from the USA, how it can be the part of the USA? Because the USA annexed it in 1898. USA attacked on the Hawaii and annexed it. The world wars took place in Europe. France, Germany, UK, Spain, and Italy, they were all fighting with themselves. But America was sitting on the sideline. Even though the America had participated in the wars, but it just supplied the weapons to them. And that's the reason America was the only country to have profited during the world wars, because they sold weapons to Germany, France, and other European countries. When the world wars started, European countries thought that their currency would lose their value, and their economy would crash. So to protect their economies, they decided to buy the dollars. And that's how the dollar rose a lot during the world wars. In 1944, 44 allied countries came together to keep their currencies stable by linking their currency to the US dollar, because US dollar was a stable currency during world wars, and USA was a stable country during the world wars. And they decided the US dollar would be connected to the gold, and that's how the USA became international currency. After these organizations like International Monetary Fund and United Nations were established, and America played a very important role in their establishment. Next is GATT. GATT means a General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, which was founded in 1947 by the 23 countries. This was founded to boost their economies by reducing the trade barriers, and which was later in 1995 made into World Trade Organization. After 1950, there were two major superpowers. One was Soviet Union, and other was USA. And there began a Cold War. The war between the USA and the Soviet Union is known as the Cold War. But instead of fighting directly, they started proxy wars. Means instead of fighting their own countries, they started fighting in other countries. Just like this was an ideological war between idealism and communism. The countries where America thought the communist ideas were rising, they went there and toppled the government. And sometimes by funding monetarily to the terrorist rebel groups, or sometimes by directly assassinating the revolutionaries, just like in 1964. In 1964, the William Coup, or just like in Cyclone Operation. There were similar stories were seen in countries like Argentina, countries like Argentina and some other countries. And due to political interference, most of the countries were dependent on the USA, and that's why today there are 800 American military bases in more than 70 countries. In 1949, NATO was formed by the America with the European countries to bring peace. And because of this, America was remains quite cooperative with the European countries, and most of the European countries were completely dependent on the USA. Here are two groups of presidents. One is first Ronald Reagan, Richard Nixon, Bush, and Donald Trump. These presidents were focused on military power, and the other group was Al Gore, Roosevelt, Woodrow Wilson, Jimmy Carter, and Barack Obama. Their main focus was on the peace. And Woodrow Wilson was a president of USA, who stopped America from interfering in the World War I. And he interfered only in 1947, when it was evident that due to the interference of the USA, the war would be stopped. And at this time, there were two major superpowers. One was the Soviet Union, and the other was the USA. But after the 1990s, Soviet Union was disintegrated, and obviously there was only one superpower remained, and that was America.